Just moments ago, in the opulent ballroom of the Beverly Hills Hotel, under crystal chandeliers that dripped like frozen waterfalls, Riley had exchanged vows with Shane Blackwell, the acclaimed Hollywood director known for his gritty indie thrillers. And now, officially, she was Riley Shane Blackwell, Mrs. Shane Blackwell to the flashing cameras and whispering elite. The room buzzed with the elite of Tinseltown, paparazzi swarming like bees around honey, A-list photographers jockeying for the perfect shot, and a throng of LA's glitterati, producers in tailored suits, starlets in designer gowns, and power brokers sipping vintage champagne. It was the wedding of the season, splashed across every tabloid from Variety to TMZ before the ink could even dry. Only minutes earlier, Riley had been led to Shane's side on the elevated dais, adorned with cascading white orchids and golden fairy lights that mimicked a starry LA night sky. As they stood there, side by side, it was as if they completed each other perfectly, a yin and yang of Hollywood's creative chaos. She looked ethereal in her custom Vera Wang gown, the fabric whispering against the polished oak floors, with just the lightest touch of makeup enhancing her natural glow. A hint of rose on her cheeks, mascara that made her emerald eyes pop, and lips stained a soft nude. She was, without doubt, the most stunning bride Beverly Hills had seen in years. The gown's delicate lace sleeves and flowing train added an air of timeless elegance, turning heads and drawing gasps from the crowd. But beneath that flawless facade, her eyes, rimmed with a subtle redness, told a different story, one of quiet turmoil hidden behind the sparkle. Tiny beads of perspiration dotted her neck, glistening like dewdrops on porcelain under the warm spotlight glow. An eager photographer, lens poised like a predator, stepped forward to capture their couple's portrait, barking directions for them to lean in closer, give me that magic. Guests surged ahead, showering Shane with congratulations. Congrats, man! She's a keeper! And extending the same polished courtesy to Riley as the new Mrs. Blackwell, with handshakes and air kisses that carried the faint scent of Chanel No. 5. Shane, ever the attentive groom, held her hand in his, a strong, calloused grip from years of on-set wrangling, but he could feel it trembling violently, like a leaf in a sudden gust. He squeezed gently, his thumb tracing soothing circles on her knuckles, but her pulse raced beneath his touch. From the wings of the stage, Diana Beaumont, Shane's sharp-witted producer and Riley's closest confidant in this whirlwind romance, watched with maternal concern. She caught Riley's eye, her own gaze steady and reassuring, silently willing away the panic that clouded her friend's features. Diana hurried up the 3 marble steps to the dais, her silver heels clicking authoritatively, and bent low under the pretense of planting a warm kiss on Riley's flushed cheek. As she leaned in close, her breath warm against Riley's ear amid the murmur of the crowd, she whispered fiercely, "Nothing's going to happen, my dear. Just hold on a little longer. I'll get you out of here soon. I promise." With a quick, practiced motion, she dabbed a soft tissue against Riley's forehead and neck, blotting away the faint sheen of sweat without smudging her makeup. She smoothed a stray curl from Riley's upswept chignon, tucking it back with a tender touch, then straightened up, flashing a brilliant smile for the hovering cameras. In her haze of nerves, Riley instinctively clutched Diana's hand, her fingers icy and desperate, as if it were a lifeline in a storm-tossed sea. Shane noticed the gesture immediately, turning his head with a furrowed brow to study her face. He could sense the undercurrent of fear radiating from her like static electricity, but he couldn't pinpoint its source. What was she so afraid of? This was supposed to be their triumph, the culmination of stolen weekends and Malibu hideaways and late-night script readings that had blossomed into love. He'd glanced back at her a dozen times already during the vows, searching for that radiant smile he adored, the one that lit up her freckled nose and crinkled the corners of her eyes. But tonight it hadn't appeared once. Her beautiful, refined features, usually so animated with her screenwriter's wit, were etched with a tension that gnawed at him. Before he could lean in and murmur a question, maybe, "Talk to me, love, what's going on?" Zane Donovan, the hotshot agent whose blockbusters had Shane's last film and turnaround, approached with his wife, Elena, on his arm. Zane, all polished charm and $1,000 cufflinks, extended a velvet-wrapped gift box, beaming as he clapped Shane on the back. "Shane, you sly dog, congratulations. This one's a blockbuster in the making." Shane accepted the tahif, the lavish token, with professional grace, nodding his thanks while Elena cooed pleasantries. "Congratulations, Mrs. Shane Blackwell," Zane added smoothly, inclining his head toward Riley with the deference of old Hollywood manners. Elena reached out for a handshake, her diamond tennis bracelet catching the light, but Riley, her mind a whirlwind, extended her hand hesitantly, only to yank it back almost immediately as if burned. The room's hum seemed to pause for a split second. Elena's face drained of color, her lips pursing into a thin line. She mistook it for snobbery, a diva move from the new bride stealing the spotlight. Shane felt a pang of embarrassment heat his cheeks, but he recovered swiftly, pulling Riley closer with a protective arm around her waist. "She's just overwhelmed. Big day, you know," he quipped lightly, diffusing the awkwardness with a chuckle that drew sympathetic laughs from nearby guests. Zane and Elena retreated with polite nods. But as they turned, Shane dipped his head toward Riley, his hand sliding to the small of her back in a gesture that was equal parts comfort and possession. He tilted her chin up gently, his voice a low, intimate rumble amid the clink of glasses. "Why the cold shoulder, Mrs. Blackwell? Everything all right?" He was whispering now, his lips brushing her temple, crossing boundaries of public decorum in a way that spoke volumes of their private passion, limits that their whirlwind courtship had long since shattered. Diana, ever vigilant, observed the exchange with a keen eye from her vantage point, her producer's instincts cataloging every micro-expression for later dissection. The photographer, sensing the drama, snapped a candid shot right then, the trio frozen in that electric moment, lights popping like distant fireworks. But the real frenzy was just beginning. The media scrum loomed with reporters from E! And people primed to lob questions about their fairy tale romance and power couple vibes. Yet Riley's pallor, that sickly yellow tint creeping into her cheeks, spoke volumes of distress. I'm fine," she stammered finally, her voice barely above the orchestral swell of the string quartet playing At Last in the background. But her eyes darted toward the grand exit, where valets waited with the keys to their vintage Mustang convertible, and Shane wondered if fine was the biggest lie of the night. "I'm not fine at all," Riley finally confessed, her voice cracking like fine china under pressure. "Tell the driver to take me home. Please, just get me out of here." Shane's gaze lingered on her quivering lips, painted a soft crimson that now seemed to tremble with every shallow breath. In that suspended moment, amid the fading echoes of applause and the clatter of silverware from the lavish buffet, she was the most precious thing in his world, the fragile heart of this meticulously orchestrated Hollywood fairy tale. With a subtle flick of his wrist, Shane signaled across the room, and his manager, Trent Harlow, materialized at his side like a well-oiled stagehand, his earpiece buzzing faintly. "Handle everything here, Trent? I've got to get her out quietly," Shane murmured, his tone brooking no argument. The gravity of the situation hung heavy in the air, a silent alarm that rippled through the crowd. Diana Beaumont, Riley's fiercely protective mother and a former casting director who'd traded spotlights for family boardrooms, surged forward from the edge of the fray, her emerald silk sari-inspired gown, reimagined as a sleek emerald cocktail dress, swishing with purpose. Truth be told, Riley's stomach had been in knots since dawn, a toxic brew of nausea and dread that no amount of ginger tea from the hotel spa could quell. Diana had been fielding her daughter's frantic texts all morning, masking the symptoms with pep talks about bridal jitters, while inwardly plotting contingency plans worthy of a Spielberg script. "Auntie, Mom, please come with us," Shane urged Diana, his arm steady around Riley's waist as he guided her down the dais steps, each one a small victory against the vertigo threatening to swallow her whole. "I think Riley's really uncomfortable. We need to get her some air." The guests' murmurs swelled into a symphony of speculation, eyebrows arched like drawn bows, whispers slithering through the velvet ropes. "Is the bride okay? Did I see her sway? Power couple already hitting turbulence?" But in a blink, the trio vanished into the labyrinth of gilded corridors. Shielded by Shane's security detail, burly ex-Marines in crisp black tuxes, who formed a human barricade to the valet stand. Rather than bundling Riley off with just the chauffeur in the sleek black Escalade, Shane slid into the backseat beside her, his presence a fortress against the paparazzi drones humming faintly outside. Diana claimed the jump seat, her manicured hands clasped in quiet solidarity. As the car purred to life and nosed into the twilight gridlock of Sunset Boulevard, Shane's eyes traced her profile obsessively, the city lights streaking across her pale skin like shooting stars. If this is more than nerves, we're heading straight to Cedars-Sinai. No arguments, he said softly. His director's command laced with genuine worry, the kind that had him rewriting entire scenes at 3 a.m. over bad coffee. Diana leaned forward, her voice a soothing anchor. It's nothing serious, Shane, honestly. These events drag on forever. The bride forgets to breathe, let alone eat. She just needs rest, a quiet night in with some chamomile and Netflix. Right, sweetheart? Riley nodded weakly, her head dipping to her chest as silent sobs racked her frame, tears tracing salty paths down her cheeks and soaking the lace collar of her gown. Shane's heart twisted at the sight. He was unraveling, this man who'd stared down studio execs and wrangled A-list egos without flinching. He hadn't even had a chance to truly drink her in, to whisper the praises bubbling up from his chest like champagne. And now she was slipping from his grasp, a ghost in the machine of their arranged union. They pulled up to the sprawling Spanish Revival mansion on the hills, Riley's family estate, a stone's throw from the Chateau Marmont, where Diana had raised her only daughter amid scripts and storyboards. As the car door swung open to the jasmine-scented night air, Diana was there in an instant, wrapping Riley in a fierce embrace. Darling, you should head back to the reception. Keep up appearances, she urged Shane gently, her eyes flicking toward the glowing windows where lingering guests might spot them. I've got her. We'll sort this out. Shane paused, his gaze sweeping over Riley's exquisite face one last time, those high cheekbones flushed with emotion, lashes clumped with tears, before unlocking the wrought iron gate with a resigned nod. Diana steered Riley inside, her arm a steady pillar, while Shane lingered on the flagstone path, watching her retreating silhouette with a gnawing ache, the front door clicking shut like a final cut to black. The moment they crossed the threshold into Riley's sunlit bedroom, walls, lined with vintage movie posters and a king-sized bed piled with pillows, she collapsed onto the duvet, the dam bursting in a torrent of raw anguish. I told you, Mom, I begged you not to make me do this. Why did you force this noose around my neck? What do you even want from me? She wailed, her voice echoing off the beamed ceiling, tears streaming freely now as her face burned scarlet with fury and grief. The words clawed out of her, jagged and unscripted, a scene no amount of rehearsal could prepare for. Don't be ridiculous. Riley, nothing's happened that can't be undone, Diana snapped back, her patience fraying like old film stock, though her eyes softened with the weight of maternal regret. She'd climbed the stairs moments earlier, clutch in hand, intending to return it and slip away unnoticed, but the outburst halted her mid-stride, rooting her to the Persian rug. This is all normal. Pre-wedding stress, the spotlight, the what-ifs. It'll pass. You're just overthinking it. I don't want to ruin anyone's life. Riley exploded again, her body curling into itself as sobs shook her slender frame. Mom, why won't you listen? I can't breathe in this, I can't. She was pleading now, a desperate improv between mother and daughter, years of quiet compromises bubbling to the surface. Diana knelt beside her, gathering Riley's trembling hands and pressing them to her lips in a gesture of timeless tenderness. Shane's a good man, honey. The best, really. Steady, kind, with a heart bigger than his blockbusters. Your life together? It'll be stronger, fuller. Just trust me. Breathe through it. Riley melted into her mother's shoulder, the sobs easing into hiccuping whimpers, her fingers twisting the fabric of Diana's dress. Diana held her close, her own throat tightening at the sight of her daughter's unraveling poise, the girl who'd aced Yale's screenwriting program now reduced to this. From the doorway, Shane turned away, 1,000 questions swarming his mind like uninvited extras on set. This marriage was his mother's doing, orchestrated with the precision of a merger. At 34, he'd spent his life convinced solitude was his co-star, pouring every ounce into his craft, dodging red carpets for writers' retreats in Big Sur. But Diana's insistence, her golden vision of legacy, had worn him down. And Riley? The choice was love at first sight, her luminous beauty, that spark of untamed creativity in her eyes. Preparations had steamrolled ahead, engagements in Napa Valley, fittings on Rodeo Drive. Just 2 days until the intimate elopement ceremony at their Malibu beach house. And now this, Riley's confession slicing through him like a bad review. Watching her distress, Shane wondered if it was mere cold feet, the universal terror of arranged alliances in their polished circles. She came from money, too, a well-heeled lineage of Beaumont media moguls, and he, Shane Blackwell, ruled the indie film empire with deals whispered in boardrooms from Sundance to Cannes. His name alone sent pulses racing. Fan sites overflowed with dreamers who'd trade Oscars for a glance. Yet here she was, voicing doubts about their union. Maybe she was just rattled, like every bride facing the altar's glare. After all, since the families shook on it over lobster thermidor at Spago, they hadn't exchanged more than polite small talk. No late-night calls, no stolen kisses under studio lights. He shook off the spiral, pocketing her forgotten clutch with a wry half-smile. "Overthinking it, that's my department," he muttered to the empty driveway. In 2 days, he'd return it with flair, maybe over sunset mimosas. A bemused grin tugged at his lips, the first genuine ease in hours, born not from scripts or spotlights, but from her. In the quiet hum of the engine pulling away, he felt an unfamiliar peace, the kind that binds dreams into reality. They'd weave their worlds together, her youth and fire complementing his seasoned vision. With unwavering honesty, he'd handed her his heart on a silver reel, and now, come hell or high ratings, he'd cherish this bond with every beat of unbridled devotion. That vibrant young woman, with her effortless allure, would soon step into his world, and he awaited her arrival with a director's impatient thrill. The next day blurred into another chapter of festivities, the Mendi ceremony reimagined as a henna and hors d'oeuvre soiree at the family estate. They'd opted against combining it with the groom's side. Shane couldn't quite decipher the subtle diplomacy at play, a polite sidestep in the intricate dance of high society mergers. His mother, Vivian Blackwell, the iron-fisted talent agent who'd greenlit half of his early shorts, had pushed for a joint affair, envisioning Instagram gold under string lights. But Riley's family demurred with Southern California grace. "We'll keep it intimate at home, tradition's sake." Shane shrugged it off. No objections from this lone wolf, the only son who'd inherited Vivian's drive, but none of her hunger for the spotlight. And the rest of the relatives were mere footnotes in the grand narrative of their intertwined legacies. While Shane was Vivian's only son, the cherished heir to her talent empire, Riley was the sole daughter among 3 brothers, a Beaumont princess in a dynasty of deal-makers and dream-weavers. Diana Beaumont, Riley's formidable mother, was no shrinking violet. At 52, she was a powerhouse in her own right, helming the family's boutique production company with the steely resolve of a studio head who'd outmaneuvered more sharks than Spielberg. Her husband, Victor Beaumont, had succumbed to a crippling stroke just 2 years prior. His once vibrant frame now confined to a sun-drenched library in their Willow Glen estate, overlooking the manicured vineyards of Napa Valley. They'd jetted him to the Mayo Clinic for every cutting-edge therapy money could buy. Stem cell infusions, experimental neuro-rehab, but fate had been unkind, leaving him wheelchair-bound and whispering directives from the sidelines. Diana shouldered the Empire solo now, greenlighting indie docs, negotiating streaming deals over power lunches at the Ivy. Her 2 younger sons, twins fresh out of Stanford's film program, were abroad honing their craft, interning at Pinewood Studios in London, chasing Oscars in the shadows of their forebears. The eldest, Marcus, married to a rising costume designer and already knee-deep in the family's wardrobe division, rounded out the clan with his easy charm and boardroom savvy. It was a brief respite in the whirlwind, just 1 day of fragile calm before the Rukhsati, the ceremonial send-off that would whisk Riley into Shane's world. The next morning, as golden light filtered through the estate's French doors, Diana's call came through Shane's iPhone like a director's cue. "Come over. Darling, pick up Riley and scout the Valima ensemble. Make it special." Shane didn't hesitate. He grabbed the keys to his vintage Porsche 911, ditching the driver for the solo drive up the winding Pacific Coast Highway. He craved those stolen moments with her, unscripted beats to bridge the chasm of their arranged script. No prying eyes, just the hum of tires on asphalt and the salt-kissed breeze. He pulled up to the estate's wrought iron gates, tooting the horn twice, a polite summons amid the blooming bougainvillea. He'd demurred from barging in unannounced, respecting the Beaumont threshold like a guest star on a prestige set. Minutes ticked by, the engine idling like a held breath, until Riley emerged, a vision in a flowing purple silk blouse, echoing a modern take on a salwar kameez, with a lightweight cashmere shawl draped modestly across her chest. Her hair cascaded in loose waves, framing a face scrubbed clean of yesterday's drama, and the intricate henna patterns swirling up her hands lent her an air of ethereal innocence, like a debutante stepping into her close-up. Shane caught her eye through the windshield, a soft smile curving his lips as he took in his future wife, those henna vines curling like secrets around her fingers, promising untold stories. She slid into the passenger seat with a murmured, "Hello," her voice a tentative melody, head bowed as if the dashboard held all the answers. The silence stretched, thick as fog rolling in from the ocean, broken only by the faint rustle of her shawl and the distant cry of gulls. Shane noted it all. The way she picked at her cuticles, tongue darting to wet her lips in nervous flickers, her body language screaming discomfort in this confined space. "I have to admit, I didn't peg my leading lady for the shy type," he ventured lightly, leaning toward her with a conspiratorial tilt, hoping to coax a laugh. "Or is this just first date jitters?" But she flinched, pressing against the door as if it were a shield, her frame shrinking into the leather. Lifting her gaze, those eyes wide with unshed storms, she met his for a heartbeat, then shattered. The dam broke in an instant, hands flying to her face. She dissolved into heaving sobs that fogged the windows. Shane slammed on the brakes, veering onto the shoulder amid the whoosh of passing Audis, his heart jackhammering as he twisted toward her. Hey, talk to me." "What's wrong? Are you okay?" The moisture pooling in her lashes hit him like a gut punch, raw and unfiltered, stripping away the polish of their polished union. "Please." "Don't marry me," she gasped between gulps of air, her voice a fractured whisper that echoed louder than any scream. "I'm not worthy of you, not even close." Tears carved rivers down her cheeks, turning her eyes to swollen rubies, her entire form quaking like a leaf in a canyon wind. "Riley, breathe. Is it your health?" "Talk to me," Shane pleaded, reaching out instinctively, his fingers hovering like a cue card waiting for its mark. But she recoiled, wrapping her arms around herself in a makeshift armor, palms slick with panic. She was unraveling, a porcelain doll in freefall, and in that clarity, Shane saw it, the vast gulf of their worlds. At 34, he was the seasoned auteur, battle-scarred from festival wars and midnight edits. She, at 24, was a budding ingenue, untouched by the industry's grind. He'd always fancied himself every woman's silver screen ideal. Charming, self-made, with a Tribeca loft and a Golden Globe nod. But her words landed like a plot twist he hadn't storyboarded. "I'm not worthy of you." It clicked in a flash. She wasn't rejecting him, but elevating him, shrinking herself against the shadow of his success, his sprawling network of Sundance darlings and Netflix overlords. With aching gentleness, Shane cupped her face in his palms, thumbs brushing away the deluge as if directing a tender close-up. She looked so vulnerable, so achingly pure, that he couldn't resist. His fingertips traced the bow of her lips, then he drew them to his own in a feather-light press, a vow sealed in salt and sorrow. Riley stared up at him, lips parting on a tremor, her breath mingling with his in the charged air. "You don't have to be afraid of me," he murmured, voice gravelly with emotion. "Arranged or not, this is our story. We write it together. Think of me as your partner in crime, not just the husband on the page." "Promise me," she whispered fiercely, searching his eyes like a script for loopholes. "Promise you'll do what I say. No touching, nothing until I'm ready." A wry, affectionate smile ghosted his mouth, but he bit it back, nodding solemnly even as her boundaries stung like a rejected take. Deep down he wondered if she saw through the facade. This wasn't a jest to her. Her flinches, her retreats, they screamed novice terror, the kind that grips starlets on their first red carpet. "No fear needed," he repeated, softer now. "But level with me, why fight this marriage? What's really haunting you?" Her lower lip quivered, jutting out in childish defiance as fresh tears spilled, and Shane pulled her close without thinking, her cheek pillowed on his shoulder as he stroked her hair in slow, rhythmic arcs. Yesterday's vows had forged a bond of ironclad intent, yet her unraveling threatened to fray it, thread by thread, each drop a dagger to his composure. She teetered on confession's edge, words bubbling like suppressed dialogue, but fear clamped her lips shut. She was adrift in terror, a ship unmoored. Even at the upscale boutiques on Melrose, where Shane had curated her Valima look with the eye of a cinematographer. Selecting sapphire silks and pearl accents, she'd shown zero spark, hiding behind racks and his broad back during fittings, her silence a co-star stealing scenes. Worry coiled in Shane's gut like a poorly lit thriller. But the die was cast. Tomorrow's Rukhsati loomed, a lavish exodus from Willow Glen to his modernist eyrie in the Hollywood Hills. He'd carve out time then for the unvarnished truth, but he couldn't foresee the bombshell awaiting under cover of night, one that would shatter his illusions and ignite a firestorm neither could extinguish. No man, no matter how scripted his restraint, forfeits passion's pull. Tomorrow's darkness would unleash a cataclysm, quaking the foundations of their fragile real, rewriting love as apocalypse. Despite his coaxing, Riley clammed up, offering only sobs and shivers, her haunted glances pleading escape as she shrank from his orbit. He tossed fitfully that night in his Echo Park loft, the city's neon pulse mocking his vigil, but retreat was impossible. Riley was Vivian's prized pick, the daughter-in-law who'd crown her legacy. Disappointing her would be heresy. He knew the glow in his mother's eyes, the unbridled joy at this match, her son finally anchored after years of nomadic sets and solitary Sundance sojourns. He wasn't some everyman dodging domesticity. This was prestige, reputation, the stuff of Vanity Fair profiles. Come the Valima dawn, when Riley appeared in her resplendent azure ensemble, heavy with hand-embroidered motifs, a modern gown fused with traditional flair. Shane forgot to blink, his breath snagging on the sight of her. She was breathtaking, a siren in sapphire that commanded the estate's grand ballroom, where crystal flutes chimed like applause. The Rukhsati unfolded on an epic scale, 300 souls under a canopy of fairy lights strung across the lawns, string quartets weaving Bollywood remixes into Etta James ballads. Photographers orchestrated romantic poses. Tilt into him, darling. Give me that gaze. But Riley's frame betrayed her, quivering like a taut bowstring even as Shane's hand rested at her waist, steadying her pulse. He searched her eyes, willing connection, but she averted them, the heat of his stare too scorching for her frostbitten resolve. At the farewell, more than parting's pang, it was dread that racked her, tears threatening to pearl her lashes anew. The convoy ferried her to Blackwell Manor, a sprawling mid-century modern fortress in the Hollywood Hills, its glass walls framing vistas of twinkling LA sprawl, infinity pools aglow like script pages under moonlight. The opulence left her speechless, infinity edges merging sky and sea, Basquiat originals flanking marble hearths, a wine cellar stocked with Napa's finest. After the ritual toasts and tearful embraces, Diana pressing an heirloom locket into her palm with whispered, "Be brave." My star, Riley was escorted to the master suite, a sanctuary of Egyptian cotton and ocean views. Vivian Blackwell, could scarcely contain her ecstasy. What more could a matriarch crave than her heart's choice now gracing these halls? Her son's odyssey from eligible bachelor to family man was sealed, ushering in an era of unclouded bliss. She'd endured his self-imposed exile too long, decades of him vanishing into edit bays and location scouts, emerging hollow-eyed from the grind. And now, that life. Shane's world tilted, heart slamming against his ribs as he edged back, palms out like a director calling cut on a nightmare take. Riley, no, put it down. You won't do this, remember? We're partners, friends first, just talk. No hands, I promise. His tone was lifeline steady, honed from diffusing diva meltdowns on set, but she was beyond reason, limbs flailing in terror's grip, a doe cornered in Klieg lights. Get away, please, just go, she begged, voice splintering, and in a spasm of revulsion, she hurled the shard across the room, where it skittered under the chaise like a fleeing extra. Collapsing to her knees, forehead to the cool hardwood, she wept in gut-wrenching heaves, agony's vice twisting anew, fear crashing in waves that left her gasping, disoriented, limbs numb with shock. He closed the distance in a heartbeat, scooping her into his arms despite the risk, her slight form folding against him like a script in revisions. Lips to her crown, he rocked her gently, murmuring nonsense comforts. Easy, I've got you. Breathe with me, willing his calm into her frenzy. But he was flesh and fire too, a maelstrom of restraint fraying at the edges. That night loomed unspoken between them, a detonator to his composure. What man, mid-reel of passion's promise, leashes the beast within when faced with such raw vulnerability. Emotions boiled, scorching his veins, yet her innocence, the wide-eyed girl before him, etched with invisible scars, held him hostage to mercy. Eyes squeezing shut against the sting, he sagged against the bedpost, her weight at anchor in the tempest, and Shane enveloped her fully, a bastion of broad shoulders and unyielding care. Cradling her to the mattress, he noted the superficial cut on her finger, a thin red ribbon against porcelain skin, marring the velvet expanse of her hand. What torment gnawed at this slip of a woman, turning paradise to purgatory? Empathy surged, hot and helpless. He couldn't fathom her depths, but he'd navigate them blind. Tucking her close, he stroked her hair in languid passes, the strands silk between his fingers, then lifted a crystal tumbler of water to her lips, coaxing sips with murmurs of, "There you go, slow now." He sensed the crash, blood pressure tanking, adrenaline's ebb leaving her adrift in haze. Yet he poured assurance into every gesture, a silent oath that he'd stand sentinel through the fades and the flares. Doubts nipped at him, though. Perhaps a prior flame flickered in her heart, this union forced like a bad sequel. Why else rebuff her groom on their threshold night, when Shane Blackwell's mere silhouette sparked fan frenzy from Coachella to Comic-Con? Her cheek pillowed on his chest, lulled by the cadence of his breath, Riley slipped into slumber's embrace without fanfare, lashes fanning dark against her cheeks. Shane hadn't marked the hour, mesmerized by her face in repose, the soft part of her lips, the faint furrow easing from her brow. It was meant to be their masterpiece evening, the wedding night's overture, but it dissolved into awkward vigils, shadowed by enigmas that seeded chaos in their budding reel, tangles yet to unravel, fates unwritten. Dawn crept in on rose-gold fingers, and with it resolve. Shane dialed Trent at first light, voice clipped as the canyons below stirred. "Cancel the Valima, full stop." "No reschedules," Trent's sputter crackled through the line. "Sir, invites are out. Variety's RSVPs are locked. The blogs will crucify this. Your rep's on the line? You know how the vultures circle." Since storming the indie scene at 22, Shane had toppled titans, feuding with studio suits over creative cuts, outbidding Netflix for rights, every move a minefield demanding vigilance. But this wisp of a bride, her terror a siren call, compelled the unthinkable. "I said cancel it, spin whatever yarn you need, family health emergency, sudden script pivot, but don't call back." The Shane Blackwell issuing commands was transformed. Before her guileless gaze, he'd abdicated his throne, heart hijacked in a single frame. Now he envisioned lifetimes laced with her, lazy brunches on Malibu decks, co-writing sunsets. Spouses were stories to each other, he knew, and whatever inferno she'd fled was fleeing, they'd torch to triumph. If reluctance stemmed from another, he'd release her with grace, no stains on her spotlight. Such chivalry wasn't every leading man's arc. Had she glimpsed his surrender, that porcelain heart might have thawed, granting passage. But her compulsions remained a cipher, a plot hole vast as the Pacific. Downstairs, at the breakfast nook overlooking the jacaranda-draped hills, Vivian regarded her son with bewilderment etched in laugh lines, butter knife hovering mid-spread over artisanal sourdough. His face, flushed with unspoken fires, betrayed no suitor's glow, only a hollow normalcy he armored with small talk about post-production tweaks. The cancellation bomb had detonated at dawn, shattering her visions of Vanity Fair spreads and power brunch invites. She'd grilled him relentlessly over espresso. Why now? What's the real cut? But his refrain looped like a broken reel, one evasive line, delivered with the finality of a director's chair slam, that he had an unavoidable board meeting with the studio heads, a high-stakes pitch for his next thriller that couldn't be rescheduled, not even for the gloss of a Valima after-party. "We can always circle back to the fanfare later," he'd insisted over the rim of his espresso, but Vivian's eyes narrowed like a producer spotting a budget overrun. "Later? You're out of your mind, Shane. This isn't some sequel we can delay." She paused, her voice dropping to a lacerating whisper. "I handed you this girl on a silver platter, and look at the mess you've made. If you can't pull her out of whatever script she's stuck in, you've played her false, and me too." Shane met her gaze, unflinching yet weary, the lines around his eyes deepening like film grain under stress. Vivian's fury was a force of nature, honed from decades of wrangling wayward talents, but he saw the hurt beneath, the maternal armor cracking. Please, Mom, not in the mood for a scene. Riley's resting upstairs. Just let her wake on her own. Get her some breakfast when she does. He pushed back from the marble-topped island, the scrape of his chair echoing like a slate clapper in the sunlit kitchen, and by 8 a.m., he was gone, tires humming down the canyon roads toward his Century City office. He shouldn't have left, not with the fault lines spiderwebbing their fresh vows. But the escape was autopilot, a director fleeing a troubled Daily's review. Vivian paced the terracotta tiles, a cocktail of bewilderment and unease churning in her gut like a poorly mixed martini. By noon, as sunlight slanted through the clear-story windows like golden searchlights, Riley stirred in the guest wing, a lavish conversion of the old screening room, with velvet screening drapes now framing a California king and walls papered in subtle script motifs. The night's horrors replayed in high def, the glint of glass at her throat, Shane's arms a reluctant cage, the weight of unspoken sins pressing her into the mattress. Diana had swung by at dawn, slipping in like a ghost in yoga pants and pearls, but Riley had been lost in fevered slumber, her breaths shallow as reel-to-reel static. Let her be, Vivian had murmured at the door, her hand on Diana's elbow a bridge of shared complicity. Diana had merely brushed a kiss to Riley's damp brow, lingering with a sigh that spoke volumes of borrowed time, before retreating to her Pilates class in Brentwood, distractions as her armor. What had Shane spun for the family? Riley wondered, heart hammering as she padded to the ensuite bath, splashing cool water on her face, the mirror fogging with her exhales. The Valima loomed like a guillotine, today's spectacle of power toasts and paparazzi flashes. An unnatural quiet blanketed the manor, broken only by the distant trill of a mockingbird, sending her pulse into overdrive. She emerged in a simple tank and lounge pants, hair a tousled halo, and Vivian rose from the breakfast nook with a forced smile that didn't reach her eyes, enveloping Riley in a hug scented with lavender lotion and lingering Chanel. There you are, sweetheart. Come, sit. The embrace was stiff, laced with an awkward shame that prickled like static on a bad take. Vivian's cheeks warmed as she pulled back, words tumbling out in a rush. The Valima's off, canceled this morning. Family thing, you understand. Riley's gaze flicked up, surprise melting into a flood of relief that washed the tension from her shoulders, but she schooled it quickly, nodding mutely. Vivian had assumed Shane had prepped her, but the blank stare, those emerald eyes wide as unspooled film, twisted the knife of embarrassment deeper. Shane had that crunch time meeting, left at dawn. Should be back by cocktail hour. Traffic willing. The words hung, and Riley exhaled audibly, her posture uncoiling like a released clapperboard, the knot in her chest loosening for the first time since vows. She chatted more freely then, halting anecdotes about the henna artist's quirky tattoo stories, a tentative bridge over the chasm. But as Vivian reached for a refill on her mimosa, Riley excused herself abruptly, retreating to her room with a politeness that bordered on evasion. The snub landed like a cold red. Vivian's optimism curdled, her son's face flashing in her mind. No post-nuptial glow, just the hollow courtesy of a man phoning in a cameo. Illusion. She chided herself, shaking it off like a bad outtake, but the seed of doubt had taken root, unseen. Unbeknownst to her, Shane's elation was a phantom. The joy she'd engineered by slotting Riley into his life, a perfect co-lead for his solitary blockbuster, had evaporated in the ether of her terrors. At the office, the cancellation ricocheted like a botched stunt, execs in glass-walled conference rooms gawking over lattes, whispers slithering through the cubicles. Blackwell's bride bailed? What's the tea? As his inbox bloated with frantic pings from publicists and TMZ tip lines, he fielded the barrage with gritted teeth. Personal matter, rescheduling soon. A mantra that fooled no one, the undercurrent of scandal buzzing like faulty fluorescence. The day dragged, a montage of indignities. Snide asides from rival producers at the water cooler. Voicemails laced with schadenfreude from Old Flame's agents. All for her, this whirlwind who'd upended his frame. By dusk, frustration simmered to a boil, propelling him homeward in a haze of canyon traffic, the Porsche's engine growling his unrest. The real gut punch awaited. Riley wasn't in their suite, but barricaded in the guest wing, door latched like a rejected script. Mom's downstairs, what will she think? Us like this? Shane's voice cracked through the wood, raw as an unpolished take, before he shouldered in with the duplicate key fob, finding her curled on the chaise. A portrait of quiet agony, pale as overexposed film, eyes shadowed with yesterday's ghosts. If you're unwell or something's eating at you, Riley, spill it. But please, no more walls. Today I ate dirt for you in front of the entire board. How long do you expect me to swallow this? His tone frayed at the edges, not accusation but plea, a bid to sand down the barbs of her isolation without drawing blood. Riley crumpled then, dissolving into his lap with a sob that wrenched from her core, the same ritual she'd performed in Diana's arms through an adolescence of auditions and anxieties. Shane cupped her hands, noting the feverish heat radiating from her skin like a faulty spotlight. Stay in our room at least. People will talk, see the distance. If you don't want this, us, fine, but don't broadcast it. For my family's sake, Riley, at minimum. He gathered her close, voice softening to a director's notes session, oblivious to Vivian hovering beyond the door, her face ashen as a faded print. Retreating with the confirmation of her worst dailies. The rift was real, gaping. He'd caught her odd vibe since breakfast, the averted glances, the solo suppers, but now, etched in eavesdropped stone. He coaxed her back to their wing, administering meds with the precision of a gaffer rigging lights, ibuprofen chased with electrolyte-laced water. She drifted off in fitful repose, and he stood vigil through another restless night, the city's pulse mocking his through the blackout drapes. What man wouldn't unravel, his luminous bride slumbering inches away while he catalogued her contours like a storyboard? This union had delivered only thorns and wakeful hours so far, the opening act of a tragedy neither had auditioned for. Yet it was merely the prologue. Countless nights loomed, scripted in shadow, weeks blurred into a montage of strained silences, until one sun-drenched afternoon in the manor's atrium, palm fronds whispering against the skylight, Vivian cornered Riley by the koi pond, her patience snapping like overtaut guy wires. Why won't you tell me? Why the distance from my son? I ignored it as your private reel, but no more. If Shane's not your leading man, tell your family. Walk away before you ruin him. Vivian was mother incarnate. Her limit for watching him dim, unvoiced but etched in his tight smiles, the untouched sides of the bed long since crossed. A week in, and intimacy was a no-man's land. Shane's ease was AWOL, replaced by the ghost of unfulfilled promise. From the foyer, Riley had overheard, shrinking against the credenza, tears silent as subtitles. "Mom, what's this?" Shane interjected, striding in with keys jangling like loose change, his gaze sweeping the tableau, Vivian's rigid stance, Riley's bowed head. "The mess you're papering over. Do you know what they're saying out there? Blogs, agents, Blackwell's shotgun wedding gone south. She ghosts guests, stonewalls conversations. What does she want?" Vivian's edge was honed, a producer demanding reshoots. "She's my wife, Mom, the details between us. I'll direct that scene. As for the noise, isn't a happy son enough? I expected better from you." Disappointment laced his words like a bad loop, but he turned to Riley, arm a steady boom around her shoulders, guiding her inside as she shattered against him, sobs muffled in his shirt, a deluge of release. Vivian reeled, her boy's allegiance a plot twist. He'd sided with the interloper, his defense a velvet hammer. To Riley's ear, amid the heaving, he murmured, "Ignore her. It's not worth the frame." A relieved curve touched her lips, the first voluntary thaw, and she leaned in unprompted, her fingers lacing his. "I told you, I'm not worthy," she hiccuped, and Shane's brow furrowed, a silent query pulling her deeper. Her flush bloomed scarlet, words trapped like a jammed projector. He eased her onto the bed, kneeling at her feet, cradling her hands as he peered up, eyes locked like a two-shot. "Tell me, why flinch from my touch? You freeze mid-sentence with everyone. I'm your husband, Riley. When I reach for what's mine, you recoil like it's poison. How long can this loop?" His voice cracked, vulnerability bared, a man, not a monolith, teetering on tolerance's brink. "I'm human, limits, you know? If you don't open up," his mind raced. Diana's shadow. That shattered night, and then it spilled, hands to her face. The torrent of trauma. The assault's shadow, the infection's grip. A betrayal that had scarred deeper than skin. "Now divorce me, please. I can't do the things you want, what your mom envisions." Sobs racked her, fingers clutching his like lifelines, eyes beseeching through terror's veil. Don't tell her or anyone. No doctors. I'd rather die. End it all. He stared, eons compressing into heartbeats, then pulled her to his chest, her confessions a floodgate of empathy. This was her nadir, a drama of mythic proportions. The flinches, screams, silences replaying in his mind's eye. She trusted him now, a seismic shift, her whispers a bridge from isolation. We skip the docs. I'll handle your healing myself. He kissed her brow, her face lifting in wary hope, lashes fluttering down. Doubt flickered, mockery, but his gravity anchored her. Tucking her in, he hovered, resolute. Trust me? That night, Shane Blackwell shed 3 years' dust. Resurrecting Dr. Shane, the med school prodigy who'd abandoned scalpels for scripts after a patient's tragedy clawed his soul. A serpent that had stalked his dreams through residency hell. Business had been balm, joining his father's indie distribution firm, scaling to Sundance darlings and streaming empires, fulfilling paternal dreams of legacy. Peaks others envied from afar. But now, fate's rewrite. Gently, he reclined her, probing with clinical calm amid her flinches, lips bitten raw, palms scrubbing phantom shame. He knew the terrain, terror's alchemy, turning vulnerability to venom. So many women silenced their scars, fracturing bonds meant for mending. Fear festered, a silent epidemic. Infections? Common invaders, born of misfortune or folly, ballooning under psyche's siege into monoliths that misshapen minds, burdens buckling spines. Yet treatable, whispers of wellness, not apocalypse. Her rawness stunned him. He'd never scripted such depths. He bolted to the garage, returning with a kit from his pre-film life. Antiseptics, probes, finding her in fresh paroxysms, slick with sweat. A lifetime's war, this affliction. He murmured mantras through her winces, cleansing wounds with steady hands. Her shame a shroud he peeled layer by excruciating layer. Pain was the toll, but salvation's price. For her life he'd pay. Post-analgesic, she writhed 2 hours in limbo, then peace rippled across her features like a soft focus filter. For the first time in epochs, she nestled against him, head to his chest, and he threaded fingers through her tresses, weaving assurances. Not just husband, your director, your ally. Any storm, I'm the cut to safety. No fears here. She absorbed it, a balm seeping into fractures, tranquility unfurling like credits rolling. Slumber claimed her unannounced, and Shane adjusted her pillow, strands fanning like spilled celluloid. His gaze traced her lips, flushed petals, and with reverence he brushed them, a ghost of a kiss, retreating with a half-smile that bloomed bittersweet. She was his reel of gold, this fragile starlet weathering gales unseen. The thought quaked him. No surrender now. He'd fight frame by frame. Dawn broke with purpose. Hospital-bound, appointment locked with Dr. Havia, a gynecology sage from his fellowship days. Older, avuncular, their rapport a shorthand of shared rounds and wry post-shift coffees. Trust was absolute. Riley's dread had metastasized to mental maze, demanding Javia's map. In the sterile consult, crisp with lemon polish and heartbeat monitors, Javia awaited, drawing Riley out with glacial grace, hand over hers, smile a lifeline. Talk to me, dear. What shadows linger? Riley faltered, glances darting to Shane like cues missed, shame's blush a perpetual filter. Words stuck, but Javia's warmth thawed edges, unraveling knots in a cascade of clarifications. Relief curved Riley's mouth, a genuine arc. Javia dispensed directives for Shane, demystify the dread, layer by layer, though his MD instincts hummed redundant, this a courtesy to her lens. Long absent from her orbit, he demurred lunch invites. Rain check, lunch with my bride instead. Hand in hers, he steered through corridors humming with beeps and brisk heels, aiming for a discreet bistro on Sunset, visions of candlelit confidences dancing. But at the East Bank elevators, doors parted like a plot pivot, disgorging her, stethoscope looped at her neck, that signature brown bun pinned with precision, golden eyes sharp as a scalpel's gleam. Leja, ex-flame, ghost of his med school wreckage, stood frozen, then advanced, a smile cracking her poise like fine china. Shane's blood iced, color draining as 3 years' exile shattered. She'd vanished stateside after their implosion, the residency scandal that had scorched him, prompting his pivot to celluloid. Unbeknownst, she'd repatriated, LA's gravity reclaiming. Shane? Long time, Leja purred, voice a velvet trap, but he pivoted sharply, Riley's hand a tether, striding past without a flicker. She pursued to the threshold, heedless of gawking interns or clipboard sentries. Fame be damned, just a crumb of closure. Wait, hear me out. Stay clear of my path and don't rattle my wife, he cut, low thunder underscoring wife, a deliberate barb. Leja's stare widened at Riley, the petite enigma in his grasp, astonishment etching her features like a sudden close-up. Girl who herself was ensnared in doubt and dread, her frame shrinking against his side like a shadow fleeing the spotlight. With quivering eyes, Riley shot Leja a glare laced with fury, head bowed as if the marble floors held safer ground. No curiosity sparked for this interloper, just a visceral recoil. I only want to talk, Shane. Just a moment, Leja pressed, her voice a silken snare, but he shut it down with granite resolve. I've told you, I want nothing to do with it. The words lashed out, sharp as a whip crack in the echoing hallway, and rather than denting Leja's armor, they ricocheted, propelling Riley tighter into his chest, her fingers twisting the lapel of his blazer like a lifeline amid the sterile hum of fluorescent lights. Leja seethed in silence, eyes smoldering as she watched him guide Riley away, his hand a steady anchor at the small of her back, their silhouettes merging into one against the corridor's glare. 3 years prior, that man had been the axis of Leja's universe, and she the first woman to breach his guarded heart, his surgical resident, confidant in the dim-lit break rooms of Cedars-Sinai, where they'd stolen kisses over lukewarm coffee and shared dreams of white coats turning to white picket fences. Everything had hummed with normalcy, a rom-com reel unspooling flawlessly, until that fateful night shift's end. Shane, clocking out with the weight of a 12-hour trauma rotation, made one last sweep through the ER bays. There, on an empty gurney meant for the overflow, he'd frozen, Leja entwined with a faceless intern, shadows dancing under the harsh halogens. The betrayal hit like a code blue, earth tilting, monitors flatlining in his ears. He'd loved her fiercely, proposed with a ring scavenged from his med student savings, visions of courthouse vows and beachside honeymoons in Malibu. But Leja had shrugged it off with a cool detachment, her words a scalpel to his soul. Darling, in this life of pagers and protocols, loyalty's just a script we improvise. I'm wired for the thrill, not the tie-down. That dawn, he'd severed every tie, resignation letter drafted by sunrise, scrubs discarded like a bad sequel. The ache of first love lingered like phantom limb pain, a dull throb through his pivot to film, but Time's edit bay had healed the raw edges. Now Leja loomed again, a glitch in his happy ending, but Shane blanked her out, a deleted scene. Back at the manor that evening, as twilight bled purple over the canyons, Riley's curiosity bubbled over the rim of her chamomile tea, her gaze tracing his profile with a flicker of something sharper than concern, jealousy, raw and unpolished, etching faint lines around her mouth. Who was she? That woman at the hospital, why'd she look at you like that? Shane caught the undercurrent, the possessive glint in her emerald eyes, and deflected with a feather-light kiss to her cheek, lips lingering on the warmth of her skin scented with vanilla lotion. Ancient history love, not worth the real. He steered the conversation to lighter cuts, her latest script tweaks, the way the jacaranda blooms framed the pool like a natural dolly shot, guarding his past like unshot dailies. Little did he know Leja's venom was already scripting sabotage, her grudge a slow-burn thriller poised to derail their fragile arc. In a casual feint during their consult, Leja had wheedled details from Dr. Javia, Shane's oversight in swearing confidentiality a fatal continuity error. Armed with Riley's vulnerabilities, Leja wove a web of malice, threads pulling taut to sunder their union. But progress bloomed elsewhere, Riley's mending under the med's steady rhythm, her flinches fading like overexposed fades. She'd linger in his orbit now, trading whispers over sunset salads on the terrace, halting tales of her Yale days, the scripts she'd shelved for this spotlight. Public dinners beckoned. She'd perch beside him at power brunches in WeHo, her laughter a tentative soundtrack. A month blurred by in this gentle montage, Vivian's relief palpable as she bustled with fresh linens and insider scoops on Napa vintages, her son's ease a balm to her producer's heart. When Shane drew near, vows of devotion murmured against her temple, Riley would tilt her head, a quiet smile blooming like end credits. The terror's grip loosening to a mere echo. He was mid-conference in his glass-walled office. Storyboards for a noir revival splayed across the oak desk. The LA basin sprawling below like a vast extras call. When Riley's video pinged through, her face filling the screen with that sun-kissed glow he'd come to crave. "Hey, beautiful, how's the day treating you?" "Missing you like crazy," he teased, voice dipping to that gravelly timbre reserved for her alone. "Tell me everything." But her smile faltered, a shadow crossing her features like a cloud over the Hollywood sign. "Morning's been off. That old ache's creeping back." She downplayed it, not wanting to drag his focus from the pitch, but guilt gnawed at her. Why the weakness, this dependency on his steady orbit? "What's with the walls, Riley? Talk to me, everything golden?" Alarm flickered in his chest, a director sensing a flubbed line, and she ducked her gaze, lashes veiling the truth. 2 days of forgotten doses, the flare-up a stealthy villain stealing scenes. Before he could probe, "Breathe, love. We'll fix." The office door burst inward with a theatrical slam, hinges protesting like a bad sound mix. Mobile propped on the desk, screen alive with her watchful eyes, Leja stormed the frame, hair a wild cascade, white coat askew like a villain's cape. Shane surged to his feet, shock etching his jaw. "What the hell are you doing here?" The words sliced, edged with frost, but she closed the gap in a whirlwind, pressing against him with desperate fervor, lips grazing his collarbone in a frenzy that reeked of rehearsed seduction. The video feed captured it all, Leia's hands roaming, her whisper a venomous soliloquy. "Take me back, Shane. Your restlessness screams it. That girl's a prop, not a partner. She can't give you what you need. You're a healer reduced to babysitting a patient. Feel my fire. Quench it. Forgive me." Bewilderment crashed over him, a tidal wave of revulsion and rage. "Have you lost it, Leja? Get out. Now." He shoved her back, palms firm on her shoulders, but she lunged again, nails digging into his shirt with manic intensity. Riley's flush bloomed nuclear on the screen, her composure shattering as the scene unfolded in cruel close-up. She sagged into the chaise, hand clamped over her mouth, silent witness to the unraveling. "Leave, Leja. There's no us, never again." "And Riley? Speak ill of her once more, and I'll bury you." He wrenched free, propelling her toward the door with controlled fury, but she whirled, venom spilling. "What do you see in her? No looks, no spark, she's a mannequin in a wedding dress. Cut her loose, that tomboy fraud." The barbs landed like shrapnel, and Riley, face crumpling behind her palm, erupted in a wail that pierced the ether, the agony twisting her midsection into knots, a sudden vice of pain from the flare-up. She screamed, the phone tumbling from her lap to the rug with a muffled thud, her cries fracturing into static sobs that clawed at Shane's ears. Leja's triumph curdled to confusion, but realization dawned too late. Riley had seen everything. Riley, look at me, are you okay?" Panic clawed his throat, her shrieks a siren through the line, escalating to raw pleas that devolved into wordless torment. The mobile hit the floor, screen cracking like his world, her voice reduced to echoes of anguish. Shane pinned Leja to the wall with a forearm, eyes blazing inferno. "If anything happens to my wife because of you, I'll end you. Rip your foundations apart first." Leja's gaze burned crimson, rejection's sting a brand she'd never endure. "You discarded me, Shane, and you'll pay the toll." She spat the curse, shrugging free, and bolted as he snatched the shattered phone, dialing Vivian in a frenzy. Voicemail, damn it. She was out at a gallery opening in DTLA. The drive to the manor was a blur of canyon switchbacks, engine roaring like his pulse, dread a co-pilot whispering dooms. By the time he crested the hill, tires screeching on the gravel forecourt, precious minutes had bled away. He vaulted the stairs 3 at a time, bursting into her room to a tableau of apocalypse. Riley ashen and limp on the silk duvet, blood staining the sheets in stark accusation, her breath's ragged gasps clawing for air. That day, Shane learned the black hole of a heart's eclipse. Kiyama incarnate, the world folding into void. Cradling her featherweight form, slick with sweat and pallor, he bolted for the garage, her head lolling against his shoulder like a wilted bloom. "Stay with me, Riley. Fight, damn it." The ER sprint was eternal, his pleas a mantra against the rearview's blur, life slipping through his fingers like sand from a clapperboard, death's grasp teasing one final tug at vitality's thread. Vivian arrived in a screech of tires, summoned by a frantic producer pal at the hospital switchboard, her face a mask of maternal terror. "It's critical, Shane. I don't think you can handle," Javier cautioned, hand on his arm like a steady cam. But he was armored in resolve, scrubs donned in the scrub sink steam. "Today, I'll fuse my soul to hers, or watch her fade by my hand. No half measures." His eyes rimmed red, a storm front brewing. Javier flanked him, a cadre of OR nurses in tow, but he'd barred the male staff. Riley's shame, that infection born of violation and veiled in silence, couldn't parade under spotlights. It would crucify her, this girl who was his cosmos, pale and prostrate on the table like a sacrificial frame. Laparotomy commenced under the OR's glacial glare, his hands steady as slate despite the thunder in his veins, prayers a subvocal loop, unyielding. He couldn't lose her, not to this. Midway through the incision's precision, revelation struck like a lightning cut, the root rot. Diana's covert hand in a teenaged hush-up, a minor procedure post-assault. Per a discreet consult, essential for health's ledger. But fear had metastasized. What if whispers of damaged goods tainted her prospects? The family vaulted it, no leaks, lest alliances fracture over betrothal landmines. That terror, transplanted to Riley's psyche like a venomous graft, had snowballed into this abyss. Diana's shame mirrored his, but triumph anchored him. Surgery sealed, her ticker steadying to a lullaby rhythm. Javier's palm on his shoulder was communion. He grinned through damp lashes, divine grace, unearned. 24 hours blurred in ICU vigil, then transferred to a sun-dappled private suite, monitors chirping like optimistic cues. Riley's lids fluttered open, seeking him first. Shane hunched in the visitor's chair, rumpled in yesterday's shirt, eyes hollowed by the weight. Diana hovered, guilt a shroud over her pearls, the architect of silences now complicit in catastrophe. "Where's that woman?" "Clinging to you like, what happened?" Riley rasped, but Shane leaned in, a conspiratorial smile brushing her ear amid the beeps. "Later, private screening. Rest now." He winked, her jealousy-tinged flush a spark of life, the color returning like dawn on celluloid. The truth unspooled in fragments. Puberty's perils. Diana's shadow consult confirming the need for a simple fix, a routine intervention to safeguard futures. But paranoia bloomed. Accusations of impurity could shatter alliances, so the vault sealed tight. No family whispers, lest dowry deals crumble. That dread, force-fed to Riley, had warped into a monster, devouring her bloom until this brink. Diana wilted under the weight, remorse etching new lines, but Shane's peace held. His wife, whole and hale, eclipsed the wreckage. He waved off Diana's plea to reclaim her. "She's home with me," ferrying Riley back to the hills, where he and Vivian tag-teamed recovery. Bone broth simmered with love, script readings by firelight. Days dissolved into wellness, Riley reclaiming the reins, walks in the terraced gardens, her laughter a phoenix call. Leja's end credits rolled in infamy. Oppressor at TMZ's Burbank lair, where she spat venom. Shane Blackwell's warehousing a barren bride. His cruelty drove her to the knife. The scandal erupted like a blockbuster leak, headlines screaming power couples ER nightmare, with sidebars probing Riley's ghosted red carpets. Recluse or reject? Shane countered with a masterstroke. A lavish soiree at Chateau Marmont's ballroom. Invites blanketing allies and adversaries alike. Producers in Brioni, starlets in Saint Laurent, under crystal chandeliers dripping like delayed rain. There, arm in arm with Riley, resplendent in seafoam silk, a modern sari evoking Mumbai monsoons fused with rodeo glamour, he fielded the frenzy, her poise a co-star's triumph, i.e. Correspondent thrust the mic. "Riley, what's the real take on life with Shane Blackwell? How's he as a leading man?" She stood close, green silk whispering against his tux, her gaze a lightning rod on some phantom rival in the crowd. Beauty amplified by unshakable trust, henna remnants a subtle crown. As a husband? He's nothing short of a miracle, God's own plot twist. Laughter bubbled, genuine as a rap party, and she nestled into his shoulder, Shane's lips sealing the vow on her brow amid flashes popping like applause. That night unfurled in fevered splendor, Lasia's defeat sealed in exile, slinking stateside under dawn's cover, her ruin a foregone conclusion in Shane's ledger. In the manor's master suite, rain pattering the glass like a soft score, he worshipped her sari-clad form, silk pooling like spilled moonlight, his devotions a reel of rediscovery. She surrendered to the tide, their love a new genesis forged in fire's forge. They'd toppled a titan of trials together. Without him, survival might have been a solo cut to black. Now, entwined in boundless affection and reverence, they rolled the opening credits on eternity, a flawless fade to forever.